Well, hello, everybody. Thank you, Gretchen, for that introduction, and thank you, everybody in the audience, for being here today. It's an honor to be here at the Fancy Food Show. As Gretchen said, my name is David, and I am with Memphis Meats. And we're a food company based in Berkeley, California, developing a way to produce real meat by growing animal cells without the need to raise and slaughter animals. And I'm going to get to the how in just a moment, because I'm sure folks are curious. But before I do that, I want to touch base on the why. Why is it important that we innovate new methods of meat production? And I'm going to start with what I think is a pretty uncontroversial premise, that meat is beloved. That's true across cultures, across geographies, across time, and in the future that's only going to increase. In fact, with the global population approaching 10 billion people by 2050, demand for food is skyrocketing. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue has said that in the next 50 years, we're going to have to produce as much food as we have over the entire course of human history. And meat is a part of that. Demand for meat is expected to double by 2050. Now, the reason this poses such an interesting challenge to us as a global society is that given the current realities of meat production, there simply is not enough resources on this planet to meet a doubling of demand for meat. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, modern meat production uses about a third of the world's land and water. There simply isn't space to house an additional group of animals if meat demand is going to double by 2050. It also emits about a fifth of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, more than the entire transportation industry. And it's not a particularly efficient way of producing meat. In fact, to get just 1 calorie of beef via a cow requires about 23 calories of inputs in the form of grain and other sorts of animal feed. Now, it should be noted that these numbers actually represent very significant improvements in livestock sustainability. And I think we owe, as a society, a debt of gratitude towards the livestock industry for really focusing in and optimizing sustainability to the extent that they have. But we should also recognize that if we want to have a shot at feeding 10 billion people by 2050, we will need as a society to develop new methods of meat production that can work alongside existing methods to help feed the world. So I've mentioned production methods. How are we actually making our meat? I'll show you. Before I do that, though, quick refresher on how meat is produced today. And I'm talking about this bottom pathway here. So all meat starts from cells, and typically those cells grow inside an animal's body. The animal is fed corn or soy or grass, and the nutrients from that food nourishes the cells inside the animal's body and allows them to grow and multiply. Once they've grown sufficiently, the animal is slaughtered and they're turned into meat. That should be a pretty familiar story to everybody here. At Memphis Meats, we're just changing one step in that equation. So we also start with cells. We obtain a small number of animal cells from high-quality livestock animals. And instead of growing those cells inside an animal's body, we grow them inside of what we're calling cultivators. Now, who here, by show of hands, has ever been to a beer brewery? Almost everybody, which I guess I should have expected at a food conference. At scale, that's what our process will look like. We'll have big steel tanks inside of which we're essentially brewing meat. And what's happening inside of those tanks is we're feeding the cells nutrients, very familiar things, amino acids, sugars, water, oxygen, lipids. These are the same things on a macronutrient level that a cow would get when they eat grass, for instance. And once the cells have grown sufficiently, they are harvested and cooked and prepared the same way you would do so with conventionally produced meat. So what does the output of this process look like? Well, here's a picture of a beef meatball that we unveiled in early 2016. This was kind of our media debut to the world. We had a story in the Wall Street Journal. We released a video that went viral. And we did all this when we were less than 6 months old as a company and only had 4 employees, including our founders. And the reason I bring this up is because we really wanted to bake transparency into the DNA of our company. We wanted to make sure that from the beginning, we were having conversations with consumers about what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how we were doing it so that they understood our process and our product. About a year later, we unveiled the world's first ever cell-based poultry products, that is, the first poultry produced without a bird. So this is a picture of a chicken dish that we made, Southern fried chicken. Chicken is the most popular meat in America, and soon is expected to become the most popular meat in the world. But we didn't stop there. We also unveiled the world's first ever cell-based duck products. Now, duck, as you may know, is less relevant to American audiences, but it has a lot of relevance overseas in places like France and China. And so this was our way of showing that while we are an American company, our mission is global, and the challenges associated with feeding 10 billion people by 2050 are certainly not unique to the United States. Quick straw poll. One of these pictures is animal-based meat, and one of these pictures is cell-based meat. So by show of hands, who thinks this first photo on the left came from an animal? Okay, and who thinks the second photo came from an animal? It's roughly evenly divided. The answer is the first one came from an animal, the second one is cell-based. And I think the takeaway here is that our products look like meat because they are meat. Our beef is beef, and our chicken is chicken. Now, I've alluded a little bit to some of the benefits of cell-based meat, but what are they a little more specifically? Well, at scale, we expect our process to require up to 10 times less land and water than conventionally produced meat, and to emit up to 10 times less greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, these are projections for what production will look like at scale, so we are currently not at this level of efficiency, but we firmly believe that the ultimate beneficiary of our process will be the planet, and that is one of the things that continues to get us out of bed each morning. We also expect significant benefits with respect to public health. So pictured here are the results of an informal experiment we did, where we went down to the grocery store, we got some samples of conventionally produced poultry, organic poultry, and Memphis Meats cell-based poultry. That last one was not available in the grocery store, but we had some in stock. And we plated these 3 samples and left them out for about 48 hours. And at the end of that 2-day period, we came back and checked for bacterial contamination. Now, all of the white stuff you see on the first 2 dishes is indicative of bacterial growth. And you'll notice there's no visible contamination on the cell-based poultry. And the reason for that is very simple. Most of the contamination associated with conventionally produced meat occurs at the point of slaughter. And because we can detach slaughter from meat production, that concern becomes much less relevant for us. Now, this obviously has very important implications with respect to public health and food safety, but it also has important implications with respect to product recalls and food waste and refrigeration costs. And it's one of the reasons why not only are public health advocates excited for our process, but so are food companies. About 2/3 of American consumers say that they would eat cell-based meat, and we only expect that number to grow as more people learn about what we're doing, why we're doing, and how we're doing it. And as a result of all these benefits, we've been able to put together a really diverse investor coalition representing individuals and institutions who may not agree on everything, may come at this from different perspectives or different motivations or different life experiences, but can all unite around a common mission of feeding the world. So for instance, we have impact investors, folks like Bill Gates and Richard Branson, who care deeply about the environmental impact of the work we're doing. We have top-tier financial firms like DFJ and Atomico. And, importantly, we have icons of the food industry, including 2 of the largest meat companies in the world, Cargill and Tyson Foods. We call this our Big Tent mission, and we say that there's room for everybody who wants to help tackle this challenge of feeding a world of 10 billion people. At Memphis Meats, we really believe that food can play a part of the solution in so many of the urgent sustainability challenges that we are facing as a global society. And we can't do it alone. If there are folks out there who are interested in working with us or learning more, or just have some questions, please come find me and I'd be happy to chat. Thank you.